Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening. I'm looking actually as I'm speaking, and I saw this article, I read it, and then I saw another article, and I was looking about the issues of immigration. And I know a lot of people don't really like talking about it, and some people do want to know what's going on because they want to know how it's going to affect them. And then there's been people who have been trying to exile themselves out of the U.S. because of a lot of craziness that has been happening here, with racial tensions, and then now this new thing with the Iran, um, you know, a possible looming war that could inflict people who are innocent. People have fears. I even read where it affects the mortgage market. So some people, it's interesting how when you read about this stuff, how you really don't think that it impacts everything that we do in our everyday lives or how it affects people in their everyday lives, but it does. And war, somehow it affects the housing market. And it also affects, how people feel about where they live, you know, is the prices of are the prices of products going to go up? Are they going to be higher? Is there going to be casualties of war? Is it going to be something that's closer to home or something that might be on the outskirts? A lot of people have considerable worry. Um, and also immigration, how that kind of somehow that is another issue, and that also affects people's everyday lives, believe it or not, and how people feel about their country or how they feel about their situation. And so I was looking, and so you see here it says there's new laws. Now there were new laws in 2020 that started happening like by the end of 2019 and taking effect, and some of them had to do with rent control, and then some of the laws had to do with, you know, I believe wages in jobs. There were people fighting for wages to be raised in jobs. And this one right here is new laws for immigrants becoming citizens. And so I noticed this one, and this one seemed pretty intense. And just off from what I read, it sounded like they were raising fees. They were making it harder for people to actually become citizens of the U.S. And those who if you don't have, you know, I guess a job, if you're a public burden, it may be a problem. If you have a green card, they may deport, send people back. So there were a lot of things that I noticed that seemed like it was getting more and more complicated for people even who were trying to become citizens, or people even who are here in the U.S. already that are immigrants. And so here are 5 USCIS changes that will impact legal immigrants. Now, these are the legal immigrants in the U.S. in 2020. And I don't think people really paid much attention to this. Some of these are ads and things like that. But I thought this was pretty intense. It's kind of scary because it seems like things have gotten really complicated. I don't know if you really paid attention that the rents are really high. I just that I can't get past that one right there. The rents are high. And I don't know if I said this in another video that I remember when you were a young person, I think the highest rent here in Los Angeles was like probably the highest that I remember for apartments was like maybe 800 or 900. You don't hardly see that anymore. If you see that, you're on some kind of subsidized program or some place that you've been for a long time. You got lucky, or now you have to find a roommate. or you have to get on a program, or you have to, if you're going to pay like a lot of money, you probably do better to try to get it, into a house. But now, since we've got this Iranian issue because of what happened with the drone strike, now, it's affecting the housing market. But I've noticed a lot of houses that are up for sale too. A lot of people that I've known have moved out of California, and one being is the high taxes. And I think that upsets some people. So this right here about immigration, and this is legal immigrants that it's impacting in 2020. So it says the U.S. immigration system saw many changes ordered by the Trump administration during 2019, including some that will take effect in 2020. So the change by the U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services, which is abbreviated USCIS, will have a significant impact on the lives of millions of immigrants living legally in the U.S. So I don't know that people really have been paying attention to the way things are operating, but it's really crazy now. It just seems not like it hasn't been crazy ever before, but it just seems like now it's just, there's so many laws and so much, stuff going on that is actually affecting people's lives, and it isn't great at all. And so the change by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will have a significant impact on the lives of millions, do you hear that? Immigrants that are legally living in the U.S. So they're designed to slow legal immigration and strengthen the Department of Homeland Security's ability to enforce immigration laws. So some of the changes create obstacles in immigration process, so others streamline the path to the obtaining immigration benefits. And so they're saying while it's doing one thing, on the other hand, it's doing another on the other. It's doing one thing to slow down, people coming and trying to become citizens. And if you see some of the things that I can only say so much, but some of the things I read seem pretty harsh. Like they're really, really being persnickety about who comes in, who goes out, and it's almost like they're okay with you leaving, but coming in, it's even harder. But so it says here, it says the following is an El Nuevo Herald summary of 5 of the changes in immigration policy that were adopted or proposed last year and will affect immigrants this year in 2020. Okay, so here we go into it. Now, this was what I was looking at, cost hikes for key immigration processes. So there are plans to increase its fees this year, including 83% increase in the U.S. citizenship through naturalization applications, from $640 to now a whopping $1,170. That's crazy. As if it wasn't already expensive, but now they're making it even more expensive. And so in an unprecedented move, it will also change this asylum seekers fee. So it charges $50 to asylum seekers for their application as well. So actually, I guess they didn't have a fee. So now they have a fee for asylum seekers. So you have to pay $50. And so if you come from a country where money is not as plentiful, that could be an obstacle right there in and of itself. And so that will make the U.S. one of the only 4 countries around the world to charge a fee for humanitarian protection. So, as I recall, there wasn't any fee, if I'm not mistaken, and now they want to charge a $50 fee. And if you come from a third world country, or as they say, or a country where there's a lot of poverty, how are you going to get $50 together to file an application. So that might right there be the obstacle in and of itself. And so that's crazy for some people. That's like a big hurdle. And so other increases that'll hit will also be petitions for employment authorization. And so there's a form called I-765, which will go up by 20% to $490, and for removing conditions and permanent residence obtained through marriage, a form that's called I-751, which will go up to 28% to about $760. And so the U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services is expected to soon publish a final rule with all the new fees. And so that's a thing, is cost hikes. And so changes in the citizenship test and new reasons for denials. So during the fiscal year of 2019, the U.S. Citizens Immigration Services approved citizens for 834,000 legal permanent residents, an 11-year high according to the government statistics. And so it even talks about it. And so, but permanent residents who apply for citizenship after December 2020 will face a more challenging test. So, as if it isn't already, because I've heard people say that the test is not as simple as you would think. It asks questions that sometimes even American-born citizens are not aware of. So, in which immigrants must prove that they can read, write, and speak basic English and have essential knowledge of U.S. history and government because of a review of the current exam ordered by immigration officials. So the memorandum titled Revision of the Naturalized Civics Test announced that there would be changes in the exam's questions about the U.S. government and the history, as well as the oral test of knowledge of the language that is spoken English. And so also it has expanded the list of behaviors. Okay, so for the U.S. Citizens Immigration Services, that would reflect an absence of good moral character, one of the key requirements for naturalization. And so the new guidance details examples of unlawful acts. So that adversely reflects on moral character for naturalization purposes, such as bail jumping, bank fraud, failure to file or pay taxes, false claim to U.S. citizenship. So there is also some, I also heard that there's a place where they were going to give an opportunity for immigrants to take the driver's test to obtain their driver's license, which is probably a good thing and for some people, and maybe others are not as jazzed about it, but more immigration forms available for online filing. So the translation from paper to digital applications for immigration benefits is an important priority for the U.S. Citizenship Immigration Service, the government agency stated in a news release about its 2019 accomplishments. So it said that the new forms for electronic filing during the 2020 would include what is called an I-485, an application to register permanent residence, adjust status, and the I-765 application for employment application, and the what is called the I-31 or 131 application for travel document, and the I-129 petition for non-immigrant worker, and the I-589 application for asylum and for withholding of removal. A new digital form will be added to a series of self-help online tools, and the new, or what is now allowed, immigrants to follow the progress on their cases and help to expedite the process, I guess, to go a little faster, or at least make them people feel that it's productively moving along. They can check online. So inadmissibility on public charge grounds blocks paths to green cards. So people who have green cards are it may block people from obtaining green cards. And so the USCIS amended the regulations related to public charge. And I've said this in a previous video. And what that is, it sounds like people who are on public assistance or who are needy. And basically you're low income, you're in a poverty, or you live below the poverty level and you're in a need, and you need to basic needs from public assistance. It's called public charge, is a ground for impediment to obtaining permanent resident status or entering the U.S. with an immigrant visa. So the final rule includes determinations of certain forms of critical and public charge determinations detailed in the Federal Register in August. So the public charge is an individual that receives one or more designated public benefits for more than 12 months, and in the aggregate within 20 or 36 month period. And so the public assistance can come from 9 programs. Now these are the programs, including, well, these are some of them: Medicaid, public housing, and food stamps, which is EBT. And so 13 states have gone to court to block the public charge rule, therefore delaying its implementation until there is a resolution to the litigation in the next few months. That's basically harsh, saying that if you're in poverty and you're needy, and if you've been needing public assistance for more than 12 to 20 or 36 months and you've utilized it, that you're a public charge, and that basically you're a burden on the U.S. and that'll block you obtaining a green card, which is another form of way of being here in the U.S. So that's pretty hardcore. So new obstacles for work permits for asylum seekers. And so a lot of times we've heard on a lot of these outlets and these news, reels that, oh, the Hispanic people are the workers of the U.S. and they're hard workers. Well, guess what? The Trump administration and these mean people, I'll say, that's my opinion, have tried to create all these new laws and obstacles, even for now, what you would assume would be the hard workers or the workers of the U.S. or some of the hard workers. So the Trump administration plans to modify regulations that will change some of the rules on the eligibility and waiting time for work permits based on pending asylum applications. Among them are increasingly the waiting period to apply for employment authorization, denying the permits to asylum applicants when entered the U.S. illegally, terminating the permit. So if you enter the country illegally and you applied, and some people will do this, they'll come over here to the U.S. even though they applied, and they think, if I'm already here, I could just wait, and when it's approved, I'm already in the U.S. If you come illegally, then they will terminate it. That's one of the rules. And it says terminating the permit immediately if the asylum application is denied, and removing the 30-day deadline for the U.S. Citizens Immigration Service to rule on permit application. And so the USCIS has separately proposed eliminating the current 30-day timeline from the date an asylum seeker files employment authorization to grant or deny this benefit. So the agency also wants to modify the provisions requiring that applicants submit their renewal request to the U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services 90 days before the expiration of their employment authorization, according to Department of Homeland Security notice. So this comes on top of one of the stringent measures taken by the administration to reduce immigration. Let me read that again. This comes on top of one of the stringent measures taken by the administration to reduce immigration. A new rule rejecting asylum's requests by migrants who turn up at the U.S. southwestern border. The rule allows the U.S. Citizens Immigration Services to forbid asylum applications from immigrants who travel through a third country en route to the U.S. and fail to apply for asylum there. And so those are some of the things. I think that's basically the majority of all of this. And this really is hardcore, if you ask me. I just think that a lot of these rules sound harsh. They sound really stringent. We'll use that word again. They sound really strict. And they sound like they're nitpicky, persnickety about who comes in. And they raised fees, and so they made it even harder for people to come here. And people who are here, if you're not here on good terms, if you get pulled over by the police, if something happens, if you're on public assistance for more than 12 to 36 months, it can impact your stay here in the U.S. And so it has gotten really hardcore. Raising of the fees, they're raising the rents, they're doing all kind of stuff. So it's like, what is it? It's like it just doesn't let up on folks. But that's my opinion. What do you think? It just seems like times are changing. It's not like it used to be. And that might explain why some people have also applied for dual citizenship because of the Iranian conflict with the Trump administration, or Trump himself. And so that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. A lot of people are not very happy about that drone strike. And so this just comes at a time here in 2020. It's like the year hasn't even gotten off to a great start, and there's already all these laws that have come about that are just really restrictive, and some of them sound really punitive as well. So having said that, and you don't hear anything about, how they're going to combat homelessness. You don't hear anything about how they're going to be a little bit more considerate to people who are low-income families. It just seems like things get more expensive as the years go by, and it just seems like there's no end to it. And like I said, there seems like there's a group of people who are money hoarders, and not enough of the money is distributed to places where it should be, so that you won't have all this poverty and people that live in tents and they're sitting outdoors with no place to go. The other thing is that that's a reflection of the times we're living in. You can have all this money and have all these places that are beautiful, that you're popping up everywhere in these metropolitan cities, building all these fancy stadiums, but you cannot get rid of poverty and homelessness that you're creating, because those people are not going to just pack up and leave, especially if they don't have the funds to do so. And so they've even gotten to the point to where they're policing homeless people, as if people one day woke up and said, I'm going to be homeless. like they elected to be that way. Some people are victims of circumstance, of course. And this also, believe it or not, immigration with all these rules and these laws will also create more homelessness, because people who are here are now going to hide in the shadows if they are not legal, or if they're legal and they feel like they've been on public assistance for more than 30 something months, or they feel like any of these criterions are a hurdle, maybe one, two, three, maybe all. So it just creates more uncertainty, more anxiety for a lot of families, which I don't agree with. I feel like it's unfair. However, this right here, I would have said probably if I was in the shoes of someone that I don't trust that they're going to allow us to just be here and not have our papers and just be here, and they're not going to penalize us. Things could change. I better do what I can to try to get my papers or to try to get something going, because one day, we're not going to have it like this. And this is this day we've come upon now, that you can't just be here and think now it's going to be easy. They changed the wording of things. Schools are more bilingual. They've made provisions. They've made a little more way for us. There are people that are caping for us, but not everybody's feeling the same way. And so, of course, this administration has made a lot more harder and difficult for people in those circumstances. And so this day was coming somewhere, some way along the line. Someone had to have known and said to themselves, I know this day is coming and it's not going to be easy. When things seem too easy, it probably is. And so, having said that, I'm going to let this video go. It's like, this is what happens. I know, too, that I've noticed that a lot of African Americans started getting citizenship in Ghana, and some are getting dual citizenship. They're citizens of the U.S. and citizens of another country. There's also people who are traveling back and forth so that they can have an escape route. There's a lot of fears. And so, some people do it because they're just trying to secure jobs and money so they can have, a place in one country and another place in another country. Some people are doing where they own property and then they own a home. Some people are, maybe if they don't have property that they necessarily own, they just put money away and save it in case of an emergency. But this right here, this comes at a time where it's like you'd say to yourself, we knew this was coming. Look what administration that we're living under. So thanks for listening.